Joshua Nkomo, 1917-1999, was a Zimbabwean revolutionary and politician who served as Vice President of Zimbabwe from 1990 until his death in 1999. He founded and led the Zimbabwe African People's Union, ZAPU, from 1961 until it merged in 1987 with Robert Mugabe's Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU, to form ZANU, PF. Kindly subscribe to our channel. He was a leading trade union leader, who progressed on to become president of the banned National Democratic Party, and was jailed for 10 years by Rhodesia's white minority government. After his release in 1974, ZAPU contributed to the fall of that government. In 1983, fearing for his life in the early stages of the Gukurayandi, Joshua fled the country. Later in 1987, he controversially signed the Unity Accord allowing ZAPU to merge with ZANU to stop the genocide. Early life. Joshua was born on June 19, 1917 in southern Rhodesia to a poor Ndeb family. He was one of 8 children. His father, Thomas, worked as a preacher and a cattle rancher and worked for the London Missionary Society. His mother was Hadeby. After completing his primary education in southern Rhodesia, Nkomo took a carpentry course, studied there for a year before becoming a driver. He later tried animal husbandry, then became a schoolteacher specializing in carpentry at Manyam School in Kiza. In 1942, at the age of 25, during his career as a teacher, he decided that he should go to South Africa to further his education, do carpentry, and qualify to a higher level. He attended Adams College and the Jan H. Hofmeyr School of Social Work in South Africa, where he met Nelson Mandela and other future nationalist leaders at the University of Fort Hare, although he did not attend that university. It was at the Jan Hofmeyr School of Social Work that he was awarded a diploma in social work in 1952. Nkomo married his wife 1949. Politics 1947 to 1964. After returning to Bulawayo in 1947, he became a trade unionist for black railway workers and rose to the leadership of the Railway Workers Union and then to leadership of the Southern Rhodesian chapter of the African National Congress. In 1953 he ran for parliament in the first federal election, although he lost. The Southern Rhodesian ANC branch became the Southern Rhodesia African National Congress, SRANC, and in 1957 Nkomo was elected chairman. On January 1, 1960, the National Democratic Party, NDP, was founded by Nkomo and others from the SRANC leadership to succeed the banned SRANC, and adopted their goals and organizational structure, as well as subsuming their membership. That year he became president of the NDP with the support of Robert Mugabe. The NDP was banned in December 1961 by the Rhodesian government. Nkomo immediately formed the Zimbabwe African People's Union, ZAPU, together with Robert Mugabe and others. That party was also banned by the Rhodesian white minority government 9 months later in September 1962. ZAPU split in 1963 with Sithole and Mugabe taking their supporters and forming the Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU. While some have claimed this split was due to ethnic tensions, more accurately the split was motivated by the failure of Sithole, Mugabe, to wrest control of ZAPU from Nkomo. African politics. ZAPU would remain a multi-ethnic party right up until independence. Armed struggle. Nkomo was detained by Ian Smith's government in 1964, with fellow outlaw Mugabe, until 1974. A large number of them were released due to pressure from South African Prime Minister John Vorster. Following Nkomo's release, he went to Zambia to continue opposing the Rhodesian government through the dual processes of armed resistance and negotiation. Unlike ZANU's armed wing, the Zimbabwe African National Liberation Army, ZAPU's armed wing was dedicated to both guerrilla warfare and conventional warfare. At the time of independence, ZIPRA had a modern military, stationed in Zambia and Angola, consisting of Soviet-made Mikoyan fighters, tanks, and armored personnel carriers, as well as well-trained artillery units. Nkomo was the target of two attempted assassinations. The first one, in Zambia, by the Silas Scouts, was a false flag operation. The mission was ultimately aborted and attempted later, unsuccessfully, by the Rhodesian Special Air Service, SAS. In August 2011 it was reported by the BBC that Nkomo had been tipped off by the British government. ZAPU forces strategically weakened the Rhodesian government during the Bush War. The most widely reported and possibly the most effective of these attacks were the downing of two Air Rhodesia Vickers Viscount civilian passenger planes, with surface-to-air missiles, resulting in the deaths of 107 people in total. The first, on September 3, 1978, killed 38 out of 56 in the crash with a further 10 survivors, including women and children, shot dead by Ziprecotters sent to inspect the burnt wreckage. Kindly subscribe to our channel. Nkomo later dismissed the massacre as false allegations perpetrated by the Rhodesian media and expressed his regret at the downing of a civilian plane, but defended the act by stating the Rhodesian government was known to transport military personnel aboard civilian liners. The 8 remaining survivors eluded the guerrillas by hiding overnight in the bush, some walked to seek help. Some of the passengers had serious injuries and they were picked up by local police and debriefed by the Rhodesian army. The second shooting down, on February 12, 1979, killed all 59 on board. The target of the second attack was reportedly General Peter Walls, head of the COMOPS, Commander, Combined Operations, in charge of the Special Forces, including the SAS and the Silas Scouts. Due to the large number of tourists returning to Salisbury, a second flight had been dispatched. General Walls received a boarding card for the second flight, which departed Karibo 15 minutes after the doomed aircraft. No one was ever brought to trial or charged with shooting down the aircraft due to amnesty laws passed by both Smith and Mugabe. In a television interview not long after the attack on the first aircraft, Nkomo joked about the incident while admitting ZAPU had indeed been responsible. In his memoir, Story of My Life, published in 1984, Nkomo later said, during that interview, the interviewee had asked about what we used to down the planes and I said stones, jokingly in an attempt to avoid answering the question due to military intelligence which demanded secrecy regarding what type of weapons we had acquired from the Soviet Union. They remembered the laugh and not the regret for the shooting down of both aircraft. Nkomo, 1978. Nkomo proposed to address Zimbabwe-Rhodesia's land question with GEORGist principles of collecting ground rent but leaving improvements to those who built them. We don't believe in trading land or selling land, no. And in any government that I lead, you can be certain those practices must go. That does not mean we will be taking people's land. It means that other people who haven't got money will have a chance to use land, which is the common property of everybody. And if they have to pay some rates or rents, that will go to a general fund of the people. In this way citizens can use as much land as they want. Our system is this: once you use land, that land belongs to you. But you have not bought it? You cannot sell it to someone. The land belongs to the people, but everything on that land is yours. Elections were held in 1980 and to the surprise of Nkomo but few others, the common roll vote split on predictable tribal lines, with the 20 seats in Matabele land going to ZAPU, listed as PF, ZAPU, and all but 3 of the 60 in predominantly Shona areas falling to Mugabe's ZANU. PF Nkomo was offered the ceremonial post of president, but declined, instead being appointed Minister of Home Affairs. Conflict with Mugabe. Despite reaching their ultimate goal, ousting Smith's minority regime, Nkomo could not reconcile his differences with Mugabe. Ideological differences kept the two men apart as Mugabe's Marxism clashed with Nkomo's GEORGist reformism. Nkomo's ethnic background was also grounds for distrust by Mugabe, who constantly feared an uprising by the historically turbulent Ndeb population. Nkomo would make concessions and attempts to improve relationships but met with varying results, the most successful being the ones where Sally Hayfron would intervene, as she was the only person within Mugabe's party who was supportive of Nkomo. Initially, Mugabe refused to give Nkomo the position of Minister of Defense which Nkomo had been hoping for. After the intervention of Sally Hayfron, Nkomo was appointed to the cabinet, as minister without portfolio, but in 1982 was accused of plotting a coup d'état after South African double agents in Zimbabwe's Central Intelligence Organization, attempting to cause distrust between ZAPU and ZANU, planted arms on ZAPU-owned farms and then tipped Mugabe off to their existence. In a public statement Mugabe said, ZAPU and its leader, Dr. Nkomo, are like a cobra in a house. The only way to deal effectively with a snake is to strike and destroy its head. He unleashed the 5th Brigade upon Nkomo's Matabeleland homeland in Operation Gukuraindi, killing up to 20,000 Ndeb civilians in an attempt to destroy ZAPU and create a one-party state. Nkomo fled the country. Mugabe's government claimed that he had illegally left dressed as a woman. Nkomo ridiculed the suggestion that he escaped dressed as a woman. I expected they would invent stupid stories about my flight. People will believe anything if they believe that. He added that nothing in my life had prepared me for persecution at the hands of a government led by black Africans. After the Gukuraindi massacres, in 1987 Nkomo consented to the absorption of ZAPU into ZANU, resulting in a unified party called ZANU-PF, leaving Zimbabwe as effectively a one-party state and leading some Ndebels to accuse Nkomo of selling out. These Ndeb individuals were in such a minority that they did not constitute a meaningful power base within ZAPU. As part of the deal, Nkomo became vice president when the constitution was amended to create a second vice president in 1990. He was sworn in as vice president on August 6, 1990. In practice, the post was almost powerless. With his health failing, his influence declined. When asked late in his life why he allowed this to happen, he told historian Eliakim Sibanda that he did it to stop the murder of the Ndeb, who supported his party, and of the ZAPU politicians and organizers who had been targeted by Zimbabwe's security forces since 1982. Mugabe and his Shona henchmen have always sought the extermination of the Ndeb, he said. Personal life. Family. Nkomo married his wife Johanna in 1949. Religion. Nkomo had a Presbyterian Church of Southern Africa described as not an ardent churchgoer in 1962, he returned to preaching in retirement. He proclaimed respect for traditional African religions. In his last years he converted to Roman Catholicism. Death. Nkomo died of prostate cancer on July 1, 1999 at the age of 82 in Harare.